and her warriors have already fought the invaders.
Hi, it's Tom with Digital Foundry. The wait is over for PC users, and Rise of the Tomb Raider is at last running on our desktop screens with higher quality shadows, improved tessellation options and much more. But what kind of hardware does it take to run well? Well, here we have two of the PC's most popular graphics cards, the Nvidia GTX 970 and the AMD R9 390, running at maximum settings at 1080p with hair physics and FXAA enabled. Now, given the game is quite taxing on the CPU as well, we're sidestepping bottlenecks here as best we can by using an i7 4790K, and the results, well, as you can see, it's a bit of a mixed bag. In this opening section around the Soviet installation hub, the 970 pulls ahead by up to 10 frames per second. But stick around and the tides do turn. The R9 390 does seem to massively favour performance in effects heavy scenes with lots of close-ups on Lara. It's also worth noting we're running all these tests on Nvidia's latest driver for this game, and the most current AMD driver. In fact, despite the disparity between these two cards in each test, tallying out the average FPS across the breadth of this sequence, both cards put in very similar overall results. The GTX 970 comes in at 47.5 frames per second when balanced out across all tests, while its direct competitor, the R9 390, averages at just 48.7 by the end, only 1 frame per second ahead. So overall, these two mid to high end cards are very close in the final tally, but there's no doubt each has its strengths in different areas depending on what's being taxed. Either way, you can't really go too far wrong with these cards, and performance is pretty well optimized if you're willing to scale down the settings. So what settings do we need to play the game at a locked 30 FPS or 60 FPS at 1080p? Well, the bad news is our budget PC, with an i3 processor and a 750 Ti installed, wasn't up to the task of playing this game this time. It's rare that this is the case for this setup, given how well it performs in other current gen games, but simply put, for Rise of the Tomb Raider, we're getting frame rates between 13 and 25 frames per second, even on low settings, and that's with an overclock to the 750 Ti in place as well. In other words, performance is pretty atrocious on this card, and we can't recommend going this route. A close look at the RevaTuner stats shows a bottleneck on the CPU is the cause, with all cores maxed at 100% load, but let there be no doubt the 750 Ti itself just isn't coping either. So with that in mind, we had to go nuclear and ditch this GPU and CPU for better ground. In this test then, we tried a GTX 960 paired with an i7 4790K, which, as you can see by the light blue line, pushes an experience quite close to Xbox One settings. We've also left adaptive VSync on to match that console settings as well, adding tears to the top of the screen whenever a frame goes over its rendering budget. And as you can see, the 960 actually outperforms the Xbox One in areas where the console struggles, holding a strong 30 FPS line without resorting to tearing very often. Again, this is matching the Xbox One settings as close as we can. So what are they? This is with shadows and dynamic foliage set to medium, level of detail and textures to high, and sunsoft shadows turned off. From there, all other screen effects like bloom, motion blur, hair physics and screen space reflections are enabled. And to sweeten the deal, we have it running at a full 1080p on the GTX 960 with extras like 16 times anisotropic filtering too. Of course, you may have noticed the GTX 970 on the right. We can be a bit more ambitious with this card, and though maximum settings are out of reach when targeting 60 frames per second, it turns out Xbox One settings are doable at this frame rate. The only area where things fall short is around the village level, where lots of friendly characters in one spot cause drops to the mid-50s. This is the fault of the tessellation setting we've also added as a bonus on the GTX 970, but you can easily get back to 60 frames per second on the red line by switching this off, meaning you won't get that tearing either. But since this is very rare and very little of the rest of the game is affected by drops from the tessellation being added, we prefer to leave this setting on. So overall, the GTX 970 is what you'll need to hold a solid 60 FPS on Xbox One settings with a few bonuses, and a GTX 960 for a capped 30 FPS. Unfortunately, it's difficult taking the budget route on PC in this case while achieving a decent looking experience, but as long as you have this grade of card, you should be fine to fully enjoy the game. Anyway, that's it for now. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and give us a like if you found this handy, and until next time, thanks for watching.